Okay, fair warning. It's been a while since I filmed. I'm a bit rusty. Also get quite chatty in this video. And apparently Trixie has missed filming too because she made quite a few appearances in the background. Hello, my gorgeous friend. How are you? What you been up to? Let me know in the comments. I've missed you guys. I have missed interacting with you, talking to you in the comments, and all that good stuff. Before we get started, I have a quick public service announcement for you.
Hello, fellow clayers. This is your friendly reminder to please protect yourself and be careful when curing your clay in your oven. Don't let this happen to you.
This is the design that I'm going to show you how to do. This is part one. This will be the background for my pieces. Now, you could easily skip this part and move on to part 2 and 3. Or it may just be part 2. I don't know yet. Anyway, you could skip this part if you want to. Or this design is beautiful just on its own. I had a piece that darkened in the oven, so I thought, well, let me try it with some different colors instead of just a single color. And did this. Since it darkened, I decided to do like fall colors on there, which I think turned out beautiful. I also really like the black and white too. I think it's very striking. This design is 100% clay, although there are other ways you could do that, and we'll get into talking about this as we go. Now for me, I am making opposites for some. Like this and this is a pair. They will go together. This and this is a pair. But then I have some that, you know who that is, Trixie, of course. But I have some that will go together like this in the same colors. So let's get started. I got some white clay attached to my tile here. This is rolled out on a number 4 on the pasta machine, where 0 is the thickest and 9 is the thinnest. I did try this. Well, let me show you. I did a lot of testing before doing it, and they're breaking. These are so thin that they're breaking apart, which also think I didn't get them cured well enough. I had moved my oven to a different location and forgot to calibrate it. But either way, even if these were cured, they would still be breaking apart because they were so thin. The texture kind of like went all the way through. And anyway, there's lots of different ways to do this and get this look. See, it's breaking again. One would be paint to do your texture, and then use paint down in the crevices, which I did here and I believe here. But the paint came out. It was hard. It kind of stained the background clay. As you can see, I couldn't get the white. I just gave up before I even got it all off. So you could make it work with paint though, probably, depending on the colors you're using. Maybe not with the black and white. I don't know. But you could play around with that. Another trial that I did, I think it's this one, was with liquid clay. I did my texture and then filled it in with liquid clay. I didn't like that. There again, it was hard to get it all off. I am not really a fan of the way liquid clay sands. It looks a bit different than the rest of the clay once it's sanded, in my opinion. I don't know what I used on. Well, maybe this one was the liquid clay, but I don't know what this one would have been. Either way, I didn't really like the liquid clay, but that would be easier than what I'm going to show you. So if you want to try it with the liquid clay or the paint, there are different ways to achieve a look similar to this. Now I finally decided to go with a thicker setting, which I did like, but I don't know if you can see it or not, but this is textured. It's not flat. Pretty sure I'll use liquid clay on this one too. And part of the problem that I had with liquid clay is that I couldn't completely fill in these the indentions, because it was almost like the liquid clay wanted to settle down like this, and I couldn't, it was like I couldn't get enough of it on there to completely fill up the indentions to the top. So therefore I couldn't really sand it smooth, if that makes sense. I don't know. This is completely smooth. So it just kind of depends on the look you want to go for. If you want it textured, then maybe you could use one of the other methods. If you want it smooth, you can get that with what I'm about to show you. Now, another thing you could do is sort of a Makumigani type thing. Like you could say, if you were doing white background with the black, all right, you could do a white sheet and then put a very, very thin black sheet on top of that. Press your texture in and then shave the black off of the raised areas. I am not good at that. That is one of my weaknesses, so I did not do that. There again, it's a different way that you could try it. Just do some testing and see what you like, see what you come up with. This is a number 4. I think I said that already. Now these texture sheets, I got them at Hobby Lobby. They were 4. Either they were 2 in a pack and I bought 2 packs, or they were 4 in a pack. I can't remember. I'm thinking 4 in a pack. Now what I liked about these is that the indented part is, or actually the raised part on this be the indented part on your clay, is all the same. Like these lines are all the same width or thickness. So it's like your line weight is all gonna be the same, which I liked. Now these I didn't go all the way through, but anyway, your lines are all gonna be the same, and I liked that. You could use any kind of texture that you wanted to. I just liked these. Now these are not the easiest textures to work with because they are stiff. They are somewhat flexible, but they're pretty stiff. They're like a hard plastic. I did try doing this a couple of different ways, but I found water to be the best bet. I normally don't like to use water as a release, but it worked well for these. Armor All was not really a good idea because it took way too much of it. And if you saw my dots and stripes video, you know what too much Armor All will do to your clay. And I'm not a fan of cornstarch sometimes. It depends on what I'm working on. Cornstarch is not exactly my favorite either, because for me it is hard to get off. I find it hard to get off of my clay. Of course, in this instance, it probably would not have mattered. Alright, so I'm going to spray it down with water. I'm going to spray my sheet and my clay. I'm using a lot of water, because let me tell you, I got clay stuck down in these little bitty things, and oh my gosh, I thought I was never going to get it out. It took forever to get it all out. Now I'm standing up so that I can get good pressure on this. I'm going to start by just pressing it in a little with my fingers, and then I'm going to get my roller, and I'm going just gently to start with, so that it gets kind of attached down into the clay. Don't want to just put full pressure right off the bat. I found it easier with these hard textures to just roll, or not roll, but rub versus rolling. I just found it easier that way. Alright, so now that I've got it kind of set down in there, I'm putting probably about as much pressure as I can. Get shifted just a little. We'll find out in a minute. I'm going different directions. Turn it, go in another direction, because this needs to be a very good deep indentation. You want it as deep as you can possibly get. I'm not sure if I said it before or not, but during my test I tried this on a thinner setting with the base clay, and it just did not work as well. Sorry about the camera. I wanted it thinner because of the next steps of this. I did not want to make them too heavy, but it just, for me, I couldn't get it to work on a thinner setting. I mean, it worked, I guess, but not well. Okay, let's see how we did. I'm gonna take a peek at it before I pull it all the way up. I don't know, I think I could do a bit better with that. I don't think I had enough pressure on it. Let's try again. I am pushing this hard. Uh-oh, sorry, bumped the camera. Okay, I think that's about as hard as I'm gonna get it. Let's see. Okay, my clay kind of lifted up right there, but I think it'll be alright. It kind of tore a little bit, but it'll be okay. Let's just hope it didn't, like, no, it didn't like really stick down in there. Okay, then I'm gonna go ahead and fill up the rest of this. Might as well. I'm gonna move over just a little. I like this part better than this part, so I don't care if that part is off. I think I just squished that. Oh well, I can work around. I also found it best to hold with one hand while I rub with the other. I am sorry, I'll have to look at my nice little burn there. But I can't really cover it up because, well, it gets all gross and mushy if I cover it up. So that apparently was a pretty deep burn because it's taken it quite a while to heal up. And I think it's going to leave me a nice little scar there. I don't think this texture is going as deep as the others did, but maybe it'll be okay. See, I feel like I didn't get as good of a design with this as I did, say, with this one, but I've already made those pieces, so I want to make the mates to them. I'm going to go ahead and cut my pieces out. I've got this that I need a mate for, and I'm trying to, I mean, I'm not really matching up the pattern, but I only have just a little bit of this line here, and it's mostly this, so I'm going to keep that in mind. But other than that, it doesn't have to match up perfectly. This is one of my favorite shapes. I love this shape. That is the Fat Kite from Creative Dork. And this one kind of went not quite down the middle, but close. So I think that's good. Now this one right here, another thing, you got to make sure that your clay is bubble free. I had some micro bubbles in this, and as you can see, they're going to show up. So I may not even bother doing a mate to this. It might look okay in the end, but I'm not sure. So, and just do those two pieces. I've got plenty more of these, so I think that will be good. Now, you cannot wad this clay up. It is soaking wet. Damn it, I keep hitting the camera. Sorry. It's wet on the front and the back. So you're going to have to let this dry before you can do anything else with it. It's very important that you leave this attached to your tile. This is not a technique that you want to pick this up off of the tile. You need to leave it attached. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the oven. I've got enough of the water off of it that it'll be fine. Put this in the oven, bake this, and we'll move on to the next step. My pieces are out of the oven, ready to go. Like I said, you want to leave these attached. You still don't want to remove them at this point. But I discovered something. I am not going to use these pieces for a couple of reasons. You remember when I hit it with the roller and I said I'll just work around that part? Well, I forgot. And then this one did not indent very well. But even where the texture did really come through really well, I have realized something. Okay, if you look at this, see how messy it is? It's like the lines are not crisp as they are, say, in this. And I realized the, oops, sorry, hit the camera. I realized the reason for that. I think that it's because this design is so close together, where like some of the others are really spread out. Like, see how spread out that one is, and this one is really close together. So that means that when the clay is displaced, like even though they may be the same depth on the texture sheet, they're not the same depth in the clay. Like this is way further down than this, because this little bit of open space right here gets really pushed up, if that makes sense. Or at least I think that's what's happening. These don't work the best for this technique. I think it's better to use something where the design is a little bit further apart, that has like a bigger space in between, like this instead of this. But I'm going to demonstrate on this, even though I'm not going to use these pieces. I'm going to demonstrate on this because all of the rest of them are already done for the most part. So this has been out of the oven. It's actually been a few days. Starting to heal up. Healing on up. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Sorry. Let me know if you got that reference. If you're too young, you're not going to get it. But anyway. So this, right now, I'm going to sand this down a little bit. When you see the other steps we're going to take, this step may seem pointless, but it's not. It makes life easier down the road in the next few steps. I have done it both ways, by sanding at this point and not sanding at this point, and the sanding makes life much easier. I mean, you don't have to sand at this point if you don't want to, but I just think it makes it easier. I'm going to use some wet dry sandpaper, 400 or 600, either one will work. You're not going to do a whole lot of sanding here, so either one's fine. Now, I just got this little thingy. It's an automotive thing for sanding, you know, cars. I figured this might be nice. This is kind of padded just a little bit and gives you something to hold on to. So I'm going to try this out and see how it works. If I like it and it works well, then I will leave it linked in the description box. Okay. Otherwise, if you don't have this, otherwise just use your hands. All right, let me get some water and we'll get going. I got my water here. When you're wet sanding, you want to use some lukewarm water with just a touch of soap in it. Every time I start filming, she starts making noise. She was trying to dump all of her toys out of her toy box. Anyway, you want to use lukewarm water with a little bit of soap in it. You don't want warm water because it will, you know, make your clay soft, especially if it's not attached like this and you're just sanding a piece. Too cold and it's going to be uncomfortable on your fingers, so just some lukewarm with a touch of soap in it. The soap will help keep your sandpaper and your pieces clean. It'll help get the grit off of it. It took me a minute to figure out how to work this little doohickey. I wet my sandpaper already. Get this in here. Wet it again. To me, it is the wetter you keep your sandpaper and your pieces when you're sanding, the easier it is. I make a mess, which is why I have the towel in here, because I keep mine really wet. Oh yeah, I can tell already I like this little thing. It's getting caught on my towel. Oh, that's so much easier. That is so much easier than just doing it with my fingers. Oh, I like this. Alright, I'm going to sand this a little bit more, and we'll move on to the next step. Sanded a little bit more. It didn't take but just a minute. I probably should have used 600 because I actually think I sanded a little bit too far, especially right through here. But you just want to sand it just a little bit, just enough to get the raised places a little bit flatter. I'm hoping, trying to keep it wet so that hopefully you can see it. Just get these places a little bit flat and smooth, but don't go too far like I did right in here. These places are going to be probably too shallow for it to work well, and this one I probably am not even going to bother trying to do that one because this part was never deep enough to start with. Alright, so the next step is to let this dry thoroughly, and while it dries we're gonna move on to something else. Okay, the next step, I need my black clay or whatever color you intend on using, and some clay softener. This is not, actually I'm going to warm this up just a little bit. I'm not doing a whole lot of this because I already have some made here, so I don't need much, especially since I'm just doing the one, maybe two pieces. Child, what are you doing? I've already dumped your toys out. What do you want now? Leave it. I swear, every time she was over there asleep until I started filming. She left it alone, but she'll probably go back to it in a minute. Anyway, I'm going to get this warmed up just a little bit. This is going to be a messy process. So if you don't like messy, you're probably going to want to put on some gloves. I personally don't mind. I enjoy working with my hands. Don't really like wearing gloves, so I'm not going to use them. So if messy hands and fingers bother you, you're not going to like this part. I swear she really was asleep before I started this. But every time I start filming, she wants to start getting into stuff. I think she might be an attention hog. What do you think? I mean, probably not my child, but she's always started messing with something else. Trixie, leave it alone. Anyway, okay, let's try this again. Put a little bit. Uh-oh, my thing has stopped up. I guess I had some clay down in there. Anyway, I cleaned it out. Put a little bit. Don't want to put too much because we can always add more. Besides the fact, if you get a whole lot there at one time, you can't, it's hard to work it in. So you want to start with just a little bit. I'm going to work this in. See, it's already getting messy. That's okay. All right, I think I've got that working. I'm just like squishing and folding and squishing and folding, squishing and folding. Okay, let's add a little bit more. Didn't add much. Well, I might have even added too much that time. Like I said, you don't want to add too much at once. She brought a toy and dropped it at my feet. Now she's standing there looking at me thinking, "Don't play with me, Mama." Even though I played with her, wore her out, and she was over there sleeping before I ever started. She's a handful. But I wouldn't trade her for $1,000,000. Alright, this is getting closer to the consistency that I need it. Needs to be like a paste consistency. A little bit stringy. Really soft. Kind of sticky. Might could go a little bit further. That's probably going to be good right there. I mean, I really don't know if you could get this too soft. I mean, as long as it's not like liquidy. Don't know if you could get it too, well, I may have, because it's like really sticking to me. So that may be a little bit too soft. I don't know. We will find out in a minute. It will probably take more of this than you think it's going to. At least it did with me. Like, I didn't think it would take that much, but it actually took quite a bit. We're good on that. Let's see if this is dry. Yep. Now, this is the point where I was saying, like, you could use liquid clay if you wanted. I'm trying to get there's nothing I can do about that reflection, y'all. But you could use liquid clay at this point, but I just did not like the results that I got with the liquid clay. But you might. So, and you may not want to go through all of this trouble. Alright, so I got this, and all I'm going to do is push it into the recesses. Like that. You can use a silicone tool for this. You can use a metal tool. I prefer to just use my fingers. However, doing a lot of these does make your fingers kind of sore doing it this way. Need to pay close attention around the edges because those will have a tendency to not get filled. So pay attention there, and make sure when you're pressing it in, you go in at an angle. If you just go straight down, you're gonna trap air bubbles down in the recesses, and you don't want air bubbles because we're gonna sand this down, and the air bubbles will come through, or could come through if you sand down far enough. Now, doing the sanding before I did this step makes this part a lot easier. It goes in easier, smoother. You can smooth this out a little bit easier. Now, I did not smooth mine out completely, like take off everything that I could take off, because to me it was like with the liquid clay, it pulled it out of the recesses, and I want as much in the recesses as possible, so that I don't have to sand down too far to get it smooth. If you sand down too far to get it smooth, you're gonna lose the pattern. So I personally leave this kind of built up on here. Yes, it's a little more sanding after this step, but I don't mind. See, like, if I pull too hard, now that gets more of that off, but I don't know if you can tell or not. I'm hoping you can see that it is not filled up to the top. So if I've got to sand down more of this white to reach the black, I run a chance on losing my design. So I'm going to leave mine on there pretty thick. This part right here is still recessed. But I think it's okay. Which, like I said, I'm not exactly going to use this piece anyway. So I just want to get it as smooth as I can, but I want it completely covered. Now, if I was using this piece, I would spend a few more minutes smoothing this over, making sure it's filled and all that, but we're not going to use this piece. Okay, so let's pretend that we're using this. Okay, I got my towel back out. These are my pieces that I already had done previously that I need to sand. Got my water here, my sander thingy. I'm gonna stick with the 400 grit at this point, just to take off the bulk of this, and then I'll switch to 600 just to make sure that I don't sand too deep. Now, I want a matte finish on mine, so let me put something else under this, see if this works to keep my sandpaper from snagging on my towel. That may not work, but anyway, I'm gonna put stuff over this. Like I said, this is just the background, so I'm not gonna sand mine. I mean, I'm gonna sand it smooth, but I'm not gonna sand it up to a really high grit and then polish it. But now you definitely could do that if this was your primary design, but since this is just my background, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sand it to a nice smooth matte finish. I do like this thing a lot. It's making this a lot easier. But now you see why I wanted to leave this attached to the tile. It makes the back filling and the sanding so much easier. Now, if it does come off, like the one piece of mine did, if it does come off on its own, it just comes off, and you know, I had several of mine do that, and it's like you just have to work around it. But if it will stay, then let it stay. Don't take it off intentionally. Don't want to use a lot of pressure when you're wet sanding. If you use too much pressure, it's just going to scratch it. You want to sand, not scratch. And like I said, I think the wetter it stays, the easier it is to sand it. And you don't have to use a lot of pressure. If you use a lot of pressure, it's going to be harder to sand because it like gets snagged up almost. Or like if it's too dry. I don't know, maybe you know what I mean. Okay, this is going to take a little while. So I'm going to sand for a little bit. Actually, I'll put you and fast forward so you can get an idea of how long this actually takes. Now this is getting pretty grimy, so I'm actually going to wash this off in my water here instead of just wetting my sandpaper, although I'm going to do that too, but I wanted to wash this off. Now, what I was saying, I'm going to put you in fast forward so you can see how long it takes me to do this. And I may even time it for you just to get an idea of how long it takes. Okay, I wound up taking these over to my kitchen sink. That is where I prefer to do my sanding, either at the sink or the counter, whatever, in the kitchen. Don't normally do it here at my desk. It just makes things easier, doesn't make as big of a mess, and it's easier to just put them under the faucet and rinse them off. But this is the point where I'm stopping with the 400, and I'm going to move on from here to the 600. They're very close to being finished, and I don't want to sand too deep and lose my texture. So I'm moving on to the 400 from here, or excuse me, the 600. That took about 15 minutes to get these 4 pieces down to this point. It's not a quick process, but it's just part of it. This made it go faster, I do think, than trying to do it with my hands. I liked this a lot, especially for these flat pieces. I think it's really nice. I've already put my 600 on here. I'm going to switch to my 600. This, I think, made it faster, although all of my pieces came off of the tile, and I don't know if it's because I was using this, because my previous pieces, I didn't have them come off of the tile that easily. So it may have been because of this, I'm not sure. The only thing I didn't like about this is, see that little ridge right there? When my fingers got wet and really soft and I'm trying to, you know, it kind of rubbed my fingers raw a little bit. So I may take a nail file and see if I can, or some of this sandpaper, and see if I can smooth that down, because it's quite rough. Either before or after I do my 600 grit, I'm going to take a nail file and run over the edges to clean my edges up. I prefer to do that with a nail file. I just do. So I will do that, and then I will come back and show you what they look like when I'm done. I mean, I know you've already seen them, but the other pieces, but still, I'll show you these, okay? I have all of my pieces sanded now. These are the ones we worked on together. It took me about another 15 minutes to finish up with the 600 grit, and then go around the edges with the nail file and get those nice and smooth. So, not too bad, I don't think. Now, like I said, to me, I think these would be absolutely beautiful just with just that design, and that's it. And let this be the main focus. But if you wanted to do that, you would probably want to sand it up to a little bit higher grit, or I mean, if you wanted it matte like this, you wouldn't have to, but if you wanted it nice and smooth and shiny, you would want to sand it up and then buff it. But this is my background. This is not the main design, so I'm not going to worry about that. Another thing to keep in mind is that the further down you sand this, the smaller and crisper, excuse me, your lines will be. Like these are really, these are not as big as some of the other lines. Let me find the mate to this one. I really probably should sand this one down a little bit more, or it may just be the difference in color, but this looks a lot crisper than this to me. But the problem is, if you go down too far, then you run the risk of losing your design like I did here. Now, the design I'm going to put on top of this is going to cover that up, so I'm not worried about it. But the deeper you go, you're going to run the risk of losing the design altogether. But like this one, I'm going to have to go back and sand that one some more. See how thick that line is, and it's kind of fuzzy. It's not really crisp. So I'm going to go back over this one some more, and maybe a little bit there too. But I'm trying not to be too nitpicky about it, since this is not my final design. But that's all for today, or for this video. And so I hope you will join me in the next video, in part 2, for the next step of the sugar skull design. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Okay, thanks, bye!